Well, our guest speaker this evening is a dying well advocate, nurse educator, and grief counselor, certified in the field of thanatology, the study of death, dying, loss, and grief. With over 25 years of professional experience as a registered nurse in various healthcare settings, including hospice, palliative care, I am sure she will be able to provide us with some very valuable information and insight that can empower us and those we love as we journey with dying, death, and grief. I ask you to join me in welcoming Olga to the stage.
Thank you, Janice. Thanks, everyone. So when Janice asked me to come and do this, be a keynote speaker for Wellness of Women, I thought, oh, are you sure? I'm not sure how inspiring I'll be, considering I'm a death educator. And yet what I want to share with you today is the fact that death can actually inspire us to be better, to change the world, and to continue to do so. So I'm going to just speak a little bit about my own story and some of the things we might want to keep in mind. So first I give thanks to everyone who's here as a way of celebrating our womanhood and all of the wonderful men who are here too, supporting us. I think one of the things that we all really strive to have is more allies in our building of communities of equality. I also want to acknowledge, as Janice has done already, to call in, especially the ancestors who are here with us. Some very close and near to us are here, so that's wonderful. I want to talk a little bit about my own story. When I first started my nursing career, I was in my very early 20s, and I thought, what better place to start than the birthing unit? And so I actually was a labor and delivery nurse who assisted or kind of just caught the babies as they came into this life. And I realized very early on that death was a part of that particular phase as well. And when in the early 90s there was no work for nurses in Ontario, I ventured off into British Columbia. And the only job I could really get was to be a nurse in a long-term care home and to take care of the elderly. And what I began to see is this similarity between birthing and dying and the labors that would go through, and the way in which it really brought out a lot of emotions, a lot of physical aspects of it, a lot of the practical skills, and even some of the spiritual components. And so I really wanted to take a look at that. And as a young nurse, I wasn't really prepared. Schooling really didn't give me the life lessons that I really needed. And so I continued to do some more studies, more in the emotional and more practical and spiritual aspects of death and dying, and really started to see that death was a part of life, that death is not the opposite of life, birth is the opposite of death, and that life is what happens in between and beyond, as we know. So I began to see that cycle of life, began to recognize the emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, and even the impact of that catalyst energy. You know, so for those of you who have had children, I'm not one of those. Maybe that's why I got into birthing to begin with, because I hadn't had that experience. And so I may not ever touch the experience of birthing and the laboring of that, but I certainly will one day face my own death, where I will have to labor myself through it. And so what I realized is that death is really a great equalizer, right? In some way, women, we hold the power and the ability to give life, and in many ways we are also present there. We are the primary caregivers at the end of someone's life as a way of supporting and offering up our healing, our ability to transform inside of our own bodies some of the energies that happen during birthing and dying. And so I realized that death is also it has the ability to magically transform us. That you just have to, think back of the losses that you have had and how transformative, not only in their impact that they were when they happened, but also what you learned from them, what you had to step up to be, what you had to show up for, all of the ways in which you may have thought in the moment, I can't do this, and yet you still persevered and still moved on to care more. One of the things that I'm seeing, especially in this room, is the amount of beauty that women really want to create, the amount of healing in our hands and in the way in which we take care of people. This is so needed, especially at end of life when so many of the ways in we care for people is very medicalized or placed out of the home. It's not how it used to be, remember? It's in the same way that we are now reclaiming to birth the children at home and maybe in pools or wonderful spa areas. We can actually have the same thing in our death, in our dying. Be able to have a wonderful, comfortable environment in which we can recapitulate, do our life review, see how we have had an impact, a positive impact, and how we can leave unburdened. And so I just want you to really realize that part of the equality is that we all share losses. We have all had some level on some aspect, losses throughout our life. It's not just about death of somebody that we care about and love. It could be the change. I'm going through the change right now and realizing that I just turned 50 this year, and one of the things I really realized was that I no longer have the ability to have physical children, and so my impact and what I leave behind is really about how I touch the world and what I share of my own life experience. And so I offer up my own dedication in shifting how we look at dying, and hope that you do the same, that you continue to open safe places for everyone to come to do their own healing, whether it's wearing a stone or the essential oils or the ways that we can anoint our bodies with lotions, or the way that we can heal our heart with the beautiful drum. There's so many ways in which we can put out our beauty. The other thing that I'm really aware of is the way in which this new way of transforming our life, our world, into a more compassionate one also requires the dedication for us to be vulnerable, for us to make mistakes, for us to not always know. Because in death is really the great unknown. Some of us have some ideas of what happens beyond, but we don't really know. We haven't necessarily gone there and come back. We have some hints. And so I think there's a real possibility for us to bring more beauty and more empowerment and hope into that stage of life. So I'm hoping that what we'll do together is labor through some of these rough times that we're in, and labor through and in order to create a new world, and a world in which both birth and death can be really faced with a lot of the beauty and love and care that they both deserve. So in closing, I just want to say that just like sex will not make you pregnant, talking about sex will not make you pregnant, so talking about death won't make you dead. So I encourage you to also talk about end of life, because what I can say is that for me, I practice what's called death awareness, that when I do my meditation, I'm always in gratitude of the life that I have, and have a real visceral understanding that one day I will not be here. So my engagement with every single human and the way I relate to all of the things in my life come in through that lens of knowing that one day I will not be here, and that this is the time for me to make an impact.
Thank you so much. And I like what you say to it, is we do have to live in the moment. I remember one time I was watching a program, and it was Deepak Chopra was talking to someone, and he was asked, what's the most important time? What is the most important person? And he says, the person right across from you, whoever it is. And the most important time is right now, because that's when you're living. That's the time you have, is just right now. So even if you're across from someone, you're thinking, I wish they would leave, for whatever reason, that's the most important person at that moment in time in your life. And we need to give thanks for having that opportunity.